How to survive a polar bear attack. So you found yourself in below zero temperatures off in a remote landscape. There isn't much around you besides the snow crunching beneath your feet. But then, there's the crunching of another set of feet in the snow behind you. In fact, you hear the footsteps of 4 large feet, and you whirl around to see a massive polar bear charging right at you. You will instantly think that this is the end. You're done. But what if there's a way out of this horrible predicament? What if you can escape with your life? How can you survive a polar bear attack? Polar bear territory. First things first, you're not going to be encountering a polar bear in many places on Earth. The areas in which they live are few in comparison to the entirety of the planet. However, those areas that they live, they rule them. Dominant predators of the land. So, we need to know where you are if you're actually encountering a polar bear. So, where do polar bears live? We've all seen the images of polar bears trekking across snow, swimming through freezing cold waters, and jumping onto glaciers. But they don't live just wherever there is snow, and many people have the misconception that polar bears live at the North Pole and the South Pole. That's also slightly incorrect. They can be found near the North Pole, though, but the range of places that they live is farther than that. Polar bears live in the Arctic landscape. They move from frozen landscape to Arctic Ocean, and back again. So the places where they actually live include the northernmost areas of Alaska, Canada, Greenland, Russia, and the island region of Norway known as Svalbard. But just because you are in a country like Canada, it doesn't guarantee you'll see them. You'd have to be in the far northern portions of territories like Yukon, Nunavut, Newfoundland, and Labrador, and the Northwest Territories. They're also not permanently in Iceland, but they've been found there from time to time. They will make it over to Iceland with floating sea ice occasionally. Polar bears live all throughout these icy areas and spend so much time in the water that they're also considered marine mammals. They're also pagophilic, meaning they have a preference or dependence on the sea ice. They spend much of their time on sea ice that covers continental shelves and between islands and archipelagos. If you find yourself in any of these areas, then you may find yourself face to face with a polar bear. Now, what does that mean? It means you'll be trembling, and not from the frigid temperatures, but because this is an animal that is not to be messed with. Polar bear details. If it isn't clear enough yet, one of the last things you'd want to see in your life is a bear charging at you, ready to attack. And of all the bears, the polar bear would have to be one of the worst. The polar bear is not only the largest living species of bear in the world, it's also the largest living land carnivore. So you, being a living thing, don't really want to see any carnivore out in the wild, much less the largest land carnivore that is alive today. Polar bears are sexually dimorphic, so the females are much smaller. They're still bigger than you and would pose a massive threat, but the males pose a threat that's bigger than massive. It's enormous. The males will often be between 8 to 10 feet long. They'll even be 5 feet tall at the shoulder. Adult males have a vast range of weights that they may be, but on average you'll see them well over 1,000 pounds. The average male polar bear can be between 1,200 and 1,500 pounds. The largest polar bear ever recorded in terms of weight weighed in at 2,200 pounds and was found in Kotzebue Sound in Alaska back in 1960. Essentially, for the purposes of how scared should you be, we're going to say this polar bear is 10 feet long and between 1,000 to 2,000 pounds. So you should be extremely scared. Polar bears are excellent hunters, mainly of seals. They will often deploy tactics of ambushing their prey, stalking the prey and hiding for a while until they find the right time to pounce. And not only do polar bears consider seals to be prey, they sometimes go for walruses and beluga whales too. So they have no problem taking down a larger animal. A human would be no problem for them. Their feet are specially padded and their paws are large. This makes moving around on ice much easier. They also have hairier paws than most bears, which gives them some friction and helps them to slip less on the ice. Their claws are relatively short, but they are hooked, which is another thing that assists them in gripping the slippery ground beneath them. All that is to say, You won't have an easy time outrunning these bears. They're built so much better to move on the ice. They can hit speeds of up to 25 miles per hour and can maintain that speed for short bursts. What human do you know that can do that? On ice? And when it comes to the bite of a polar bear, it is the strongest of all bears on the planet. They have a bite force of 1200 psi. To give you an idea of what that would feel like, a human's bite force is about 120 psi. So the polar bear's bite is 10 times stronger than that of a human. The pressure you would feel from the jaws of a polar bear would be comparable to if you took the weight of a concert piano and dropped it on your arm. So if the polar bear goes for you with its teeth and strong jaws, that spells trouble. If it goes for you with its claws, they're shorter than some other bears, but they're still claws, sharp and hooked, and attached to massive and muscular arms that could pin you down with ease. Seals and walruses have difficulty getting away from polar bears. So, how are you going to survive? What are you going to do? Time to defend yourself. So, you're finally being faced with the horrible challenge. You're face to face with the polar bear, and it looks like it's ready to attack. Hopefully, if you had gone off into some area that we had talked about, like northern Russia, Svalbard, the northernmost areas of the Yukon or Alaska, you would have prepared yourself. You would have known that seeing a polar bear would be a possibility. If you were to ever go into the intense and frigid wilderness of these areas, you would have had to have prepared yourself not only for the cold, but also for this possible situation. Now, one of the key things that you could have done beforehand, that is, besides never go to these places, is to arm yourself. When people are out in these wilderness areas, one of their best friends is an electric fence. That can be used to deter a polar bear with its intense electric shock. If you went that far and you had set up an electric fence, that would be an excellent place to hide. But we're also assuming you've gotten yourself away from your electric fence or your camp. So you might think if an electric fence would have done the trick, how about something else that delivers an electric shock? Like a taser. Tasers are great for police to use on people. The currents delivered have enough shock that it can immobilize a human and even deter them from continuing with whatever they are doing. Then again, plenty of people have removed the taser from themselves and continued on if they have enough of a strong will. Now we're talking about a polar bear that is far larger. Yes, the taser may still immobilize them. It may even scare them away, but that is no certainty. Scientists believe there is just as strong of a chance that you would scare them as there is that you would anger them and make them more aggressive. The electric fence would be far stronger than the taser, so with the taser you'd be hoping it had a positive result and didn't make everything worse. Since it's a 50-50 shot, do not use a taser. What else could you have brought with you? Other possibilities include bear spray, a firearm, and signal flares. Of course, if we're talking about a firearm, you only want to use it on the polar bear if absolutely necessary. Firing it near the polar bear could scare it away. If you are faced with life and death and need to use it on the polar bear, and that is your only hope, then you need to defend yourself. But you may not have a gun. If you had signal flares, those could work to scare the polar bear away. The best course of action with those would be to light them and throw them down, scaring the bear. You would want to hold your ground, remain confident, and appear strong. Hopefully this would make the bear decide against an attack. And then with bear spray, it works a little like mace. It is like spraying someone with extremely spicy chili peppers and getting the mixture into their eyes, nose, and mouth. When you use this on a bear, the compound immediately reacts and causes inflammation, swelling, and irritation. It may send them running off, or it may just distract them as they are in pain. Then and only then should you run off and try to make your escape. Why is it so important to only run in that moment? And what if you didn't have any of these things to defend yourself with? Unarmed. So we have to consider the possibility you are unarmed out here, and there is the polar bear just staring at you, growling and roaring, body flexed and agitated. Is it just bluffing? Might it not charge? Here's a good thing to know. Grizzly bears and black bears will bluff at times, pretending to charge, but really just trying to scare you away. Polar bears rarely ever do this, so don't think they are going to be in the clear. If the polar bear looks like it is going to charge, then it almost definitely is going to. But there is still that slight chance that the polar bear doesn't charge, and if there is enough distance between the two of you, it may decide against the attack. What you should do in the same case as having the signal flares is stand your ground and make yourself appear confident and strong. Even without the signal flares, your confidence may make the polar bear change its mind. It's not like the polar bear wants to eat you. It is only upset by your presence. It may be defending its territory. Maybe you're only slightly near its territory, and it may decide, why bother? It also may decide to bother and charge you. Do not run, whether it has charged or not. It will instinctively decide it is time to chase you and attack. You will not outrun it, and you will turn on its attack mode if you run. You can't outswim it either. If you had an electric fence or a camp nearby that you could get to and hide behind, you could only make a run for it if you knew for certain you could make it to safety before the polar bear got to you. Instead, you should stand your ground, prepare to fight, and when the polar bear attacks, focus on hitting it in sensitive areas like the face and nose. In this instance, this is your best shot, to hope you can inflict enough damage to a sensitive area and make the polar bear change its mind. We will be honest, they won't be good chances at all. The polar bear will far outweigh you. It will far outmuscle you. It has the speed and the ability to traverse the terrain better than you. You are completely outmatched. You are hoping for a long shot that you hit it just hard enough in the right spot that it flees. Or you are hoping that in standing your ground and remaining confident that it doesn't attack in the first place. But as has been made very clear, if you go to these places, please plan accordingly. A recap: signal flares are a good idea. Bear spray is a great idea. A firearm is good for scaring them off, and only use them on the polar bear if absolutely necessary. A taser is a bad idea. Staying hidden behind an electric fence is the second best idea. The best idea? Don't go into polar bear country in the first place.